Meow! Welcome to PodKat. This is Kat, and welcome to my pod. I wanted to thank everybody who listened to episode 1. This is kind of my way of staying sane in quarantine right now through the pandemic. I am looking to talk to guests about their experience. I'm hoping to talk to a teacher, a medical worker, a mom, etc., just to get different people's reactions. My hope with this is to educate people as far as hearing different unique perspectives on, again, I'm not an expert on anything, so if you are an expert in a field, it's really helpful to hear what your facts are and your reality is. I also want to entertain. I really don't want us to get isolated and feel hopeless. So I think it's really important to hear positive stories. So I want to acknowledge people's fear right now, but I also want to give a bright light in what is a hard time. And the last thing is just to spread empathy, because I think that it's really easy to judge other people's reactions to the situation. So hopefully after hearing what they're going through or where they're coming from, you might understand a little better why they are doing what they're doing. So my guest today, the very first guest, long-time listener, first-time guest, is Alea. Say hi.
Hello, this is Alea. I am honored to be the first guest on the PodKat.
You are a doll. So I'm going to run through some questions with you, and let's jump into it. So first of all, who are you and where are you?
All right, cool. So my name is Alea Tebby. I am 26, living in Westminster, Colorado. That's just north of Denver. I work at a company called Chemetrica. We work in international development, so working with humanitarian aid organizations and agencies to help make sure that they're doing their work well and that all is well. So that is where I'm at.
Wonderful. And I'm sure people have figured this out, but you and I are talking via the telephone. And
sure are.
The reason I wanted to point that out is to remind people that you should be in your own home if you're able. But also, one reason that I thought you would be an interesting first guest to talk with is because you and I have had a long-distance friendship for a very long time. And it is possible to have long-distance friendships. And even if someone is in your town and you see them all the time, right now, it might be a long-distance friendship if you don't get to see them for a while. So I kind of want to hear what you're experiencing with your community, but I also wanted to kind of get your insight on how we have stayed friends without seeing each other.
Sure. Which of those should we address first?
Yeah,
there's a lot to talk
let's
about.
jump in first with the question I sent you, which is kind of what's your new reality there, both job-related and in your community?
Sure. Okay. So, like I said, I work in international development, so we clearly do a lot of international work. So I'm one of the very fortunate who works a lot remotely anyway. A lot of my work is with people who are all over the world. I have a lot of team members that are in different countries and time zones, so we have the luxury to be able to work from anywhere, since it really doesn't matter where in I am if I'm talking to people in Africa. So that's been very lucky. A lot of my work hasn't changed a whole lot. As a lot of trying to coordinate those people who do work in offices or who were visiting other countries on business who had to get home as fast as possible. So there's been a lot of coordination that we've had to do very quickly before certain country borders were closing, that kind of stuff. But me personally, luckily, I didn't really have to change a whole lot outside of, instead of having the option to work from home, it's a mandate to work from home. So that's kind of the difference there. So day-to-day life is, clearly I am doing the distancing, quarantine, all of the other words, self-isolation. I am lucky I have a roommate who's one of my best friends and the bestest dog. She is the goodest girl. So she's probably the highlight of this entire situation. And so, yeah, we, right before this call, did what will likely be one of our last big grocery hauls before it gets to a bit more strict lockdown is what we're anticipating. So that's kind of how that is. Personally, like, I did a lot of, but before we were kind of contained to our homes, I liked to do a lot of, working out. I was trying to do a lot of building of community, especially since I moved out of South Denver. And so I was still in the budding stages of that. So this has kind of thrown a lot of that to a halt, unfortunately. But overall, I think I am in a really lucky position in that a lot of my lifestyle hasn't been totally overhauled.
I should mention that we are talking on Thursday, March 19th. So
yes.
At what day did you what day were you told that it was mandated that you work from home?
We got the email from work Sunday night.
Okay.
So I can't tell you what date that is. I do not have a calendar.
Days ago. Last 4 or 5 days you've been working from home, is that correct?
Yeah, I was already planning on doing so anyway. So I think Sunday morning was the last time I really went out, and then I've been at home since. And then early Monday morning, I saw the email that we were mandated to stay at home anyway.
So as far as your job, you are still working, but you're working from home. It sounds like it's the same for all of your coworkers. What about your community? You mentioned that you just did an errand. Was that to the grocery store?
Yep, that was to the grocery store, and that was about it. Went with my roommate, and we got what we could before we decided to hunker down.
Were there lines? Were there supplies? What was your experience with that?
I was actually really surprised that there were no lines. I think a lot of that has to do with today Colorado decided to have a winter storm, so there's another reason people to stay at home and not leave their houses. So I think that probably contributed to it a lot. But the store we went to was actually relatively stocked up. Like, there were certain things that had definitely been pretty picked over, where you had like maybe one left of a certain kind of dog food, for example, the dog food that we needed for our dog. There was one left, which is really lucky. But in general, it looked like a lot of stuff was available. I feel like they must have just restocked because it was in pretty good shape. Not a whole lot of people were in there. I think that some of that just has to do with the fact that it's technically still a work day, and we went at like 11 o'clock or something like that. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are staying from home right now, but a lot more people are probably still needing to go into work. So I think we just got lucky with timing. Pretty stocked.
Okay.
Grocery store, no lines, not super crowded.
And you mentioned that you wanted to go today because you thought that tomorrow would be worse. Would you like to speak to what you had mentioned about that?
Sure, yeah. My mother, like probably a lot of people's parents, is pretty concerned about the whole situation. And I guess she has somebody who mentioned that we as in the state of Colorado might be going into full lockdown starting tomorrow. They're just rumors right now, but there's a possibility that the governor is going to have us be under lockdown, much the same as how it is in Italy right now, where essentially you can't leave your house except to go to the grocery store or the pharmacy.
Okay.
So that kind of made us decide to get out despite the snow.
Yeah, so that's kind of something that you guys are thinking, but you haven't heard it confirmed in any way. But I guess that brings me to the next question, which was, at what point did you realize the severity of this?
Sure. So I am lucky in that my little sister, her name is Nova, she has a degree in microbiology and is currently studying for her master's degree in public health. So she has been very in tune with what's going on, and she is very knowledgeable about how the virus works. She pretty much called it becoming a pandemic a couple weeks before I think a lot of other people started to take it seriously. That isn't to say I took it completely seriously right away because of that, but she did make sure to keep me and the rest of our family informed of this is going to be a lot worse than people are making it out to be. So I kept it in the back of my head just because, I mean, she was pretty adamant of, guys, we need to take this seriously. I still didn't want to take it very seriously at first because I knew that as soon as I let myself do so, it would just be stressful. So I wanted to keep myself in a bit of the ignorant bliss as long as possible. But I had a good feeling pretty early on just because my sister was keeping us all up to date of
inside information.
What was happening.
Insider look. So does she have any advice or facts at the moment about the best way to move forward as far as other than quarantining, but has she mentioned anything about what she realistically thinks the next month or 6 months could look like?
I mean, realistically, we would be, again, in full lockdown. She said that because of the poor response that we've had thus far, it is likely that there are going to be significant casualties, unfortunately, just based on how things are going. As to advice on what to do, I think it's really just, it's the same as what all of the other public health professionals are saying, you know, again, the washing your hands, that kind of thing. Soap is way more effective than hand sanitizer is. She gave me a whole science lesson on it, so I can vouch for that. But yeah, I think at this point she's saying that it would probably be best on a governmental level to start closing state borders just to contain the spread and really try to limit the amount that people are traveling from place to place, so that states with high rates of infection don't then go into those states that have lower rates. It's going to be very widespread anyway, but if we can contain it, we should do as much as we can to do so. It's essentially what she's saying at this point.
You said that our poor reaction, did you mean not taking it seriously?
Yeah, I think there is a lot to be said for how the current United States administration has been handling it in trying to downplay it for as long as possible. I guess I get to an extent not wanting people to panic. Yeah. I don't think it's good to panic about this, but we definitely did not do enough right from the bat. We had a lot of time to start preparing, and we just didn't take those steps. We, being the U.S. government, that we really should have done. We had an idea of what was going to happen. We had our first inklings in January and have only started now to do anything. So that's I think, going to contribute a lot to having this affect us more than it would have otherwise.
So Nova's advice as a microbiologist aware of the situation is to listen to health officials and to stay where you are if you're able. Yeah,
pretty much just, okay. She has been in her home not moving for way longer than I have, and she is a raging extrovert, so that says a lot.
So I wanted to ask real quick about some plans you have. It sounds like I wanted to ask about financial plans, your health, your fun. It sounds like financially you're not currently affected?
No, I'm not currently affected. Luckily, I'm very fortunate that this hasn't changed my job situation very much. Mm-hmm. So that isn't my largest concern in the grand scheme of things with this. Medical is, I don't have a whole lot of the conditions that predispose you to this. I have asthma, but on a really basic level, so I'm not incredibly concerned for that either. That said, I'm still going to stay at home and not move, essentially.
Well, let's come back to the fun question, because that can be recommendations and stuff. But
Sure.
as far as mental health, maybe that could be something I'd like to hear from you about, as far as our long distance friendship and input that you have on staying in touch with people for sanity.
For sure. So, geez, Kat, how long has it been since you moved to California?
Over 6 years now.
Wow, that's a long time. I know that when you first moved out, I think we were both nervous, just not necessarily for our friendship in particular, but that it would be a really big change in terms of our social lives.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're doing life together anymore when you're not in the same place.
Yeah.
That could be a fear.
Yeah, so I think that probably the biggest thing that has really helped is the fact that we've made a really concerted effort to be in contact regularly. As, like, we'll text each other fun memes or whatever. Or more than that, we have a weekly phone call. We really try to make time for each other to, like, catch up and check in like you would if you were to go and get a friend to dinner or coffee or something like that. And it would just be really similar. And then I think you mentioned in the first episode the Jackbox that we do. So that's been very fun to be able to play games together from states away. So that has been another really good thing. Yeah, I think it really has been just the fact that we've both made an effort to make sure that we stay in touch, but that we're also like aware of what's going on in each other in a stronger way than just texting like, hey, how's it going? Sometimes we'll do that anyway, but it's a bit more intentional. And so I think the most you can make a concerted effort to have a good long phone call, ask how people are doing, beyond just the small talk, has really gone a long way in our relationship. Would you agree?
I think that it's been so wonderful getting to talk every week with you, and I love that my beautiful high school Kim and I have done that as well, because when we first started talking every week, we both were newly married, and we were just, well, she'd been married a little longer, but we were just kind of chatting about how our lives were going. And then I got to hear about her pregnancy, and then now I get to hear about her having her handsome son and how that goes. So it's really cool to hear those updates, as opposed to just, hey, we haven't talked in years and I'm pregnant. So I think with you and I, it's like hearing about, hey, I'm super bummed I don't have a job right now. And then as it goes on, oh, hey, I got a job. Hey, how, here's updates on it. And so like keeping each other sane when things are not going well, but also like getting to really know each step of like the interview went well and like what that means. And then the second thing you talked about, which was like the Jackbox games, like reaching out and talking to people right now. You could write letters, you could talk on the phone, you can Skype, you can FaceTime. We're so connected globally. But also like to have fun with your friends, because I think if you just get on the phone and like panic with each other, that might not be comforting. So I love the Jackbox games, because then you get to actually kind of like have fun and do trivia, and like it kind of feels normal having a game night. So those are all good things, and I'm glad you brought them up.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
It is fun. And then, yeah, texting each other memes keeps me sane. So I love getting funny pictures and is laughing. Yeah, I went for a run this morning, and I had a great chat with a college friend who hopefully will be on the podcast soon and has a really unique perspective that I want to talk about on her episode. But I guess maybe that could bring us to the next thing, which is like something positive you've seen during this, or something that you're looking forward to when this is over, if you want to be an optimist like me and think about the world going back to some sense of normalcy.
I see no harm in being an optimist right now. So some good positive things. Speaking of memes, Twitter is a gold mine. Like, I know that it's something so small, and Twitter can be a trash fire you definitely have to go through other people, either the news or then people being stupid. But then I think it's been a really fun time to look at not just memes, although memes are always a good time, but that's where you can see people really being creative with what they're doing with their time, and it can get really funny. And it's just a really fun time because I think that's another way to just show solidarity of like, yep, we're all in our homes by ourselves. What can we do to entertain each other? So that's been really fun. But also on another level, and I know this is happening in a lot of places, but we did take the dog for a walk yesterday when it was not snowing, and we passed by a middle school and we saw signs that they were still doing lunch and breakfast pickup for kids who can't go to school anymore but might rely on those school lunches. So it was good to see that people were still making an effort to make sure that those kids get the food that they need, especially in a time when people are stockpiling, so it may be even more difficult for their family than usual. So that's been a really lovely thing to see and be aware of.
I've heard about that happening, and so I'm really glad to hear that it is actually, you've seen it, because you hear a lot right now where you're like, I don't know if that's real or not, but I heard that Disney donated all of their food because they had a lot of perishables when they closed the park that went to places. And yeah, I'm not on Twitter, but I will see things reposted on Facebook about, like, again, zoos that are letting their animals get out and move around if it's safe, and then live streaming the penguins walking around, and then people doing interesting art projects right now. So I think that's positive stuff to hone in on.
Yeah, I think it's been really cool to see the things that people are doing to just try to make this experience a bit more pleasant. Like the live streams and the funny TikToks. I'm not even on TikTok, but somehow I still find them. And so it's been really fun to see those, and just, again, like, I think this has been a really interesting experiment in being able to remind yourself of the nature of humanity, because you just see so many people making the good of something and having fun, or really looking out for each other. And like, I've seen a lot of people going out of their way to foster dogs and cats and other animals that are normally in shelters right now, but the people who work in shelters can't take care of them because they're stuck at home. So a lot of people are fostering animals now, which is really lovely, and it's just been really nice to see all of that amidst other people being people. But I think this has been a way to show that there's a lot of good in us, and that we can take care of each other.
I was thinking how cool it would be to have a new dog right now, because like, you have so much ample time to care for them and train them, and a lot of stuff when you get a new puppy and you're like, yeah, I don't want to go to work or school. So I'm like, it's the perfect time for a new puppy. But I also don't financially want to take on an animal right now, and responsibly I can't take it out to the vet and stuff. So if you don't already have an animal, maybe don't rush out and get one. But if you are able to do something like you mentioned, fostering the animal, that could be really awesome.
Yeah, this would be a great time to train your dog.
Well, let's get your recommendations. Do you have books, movies, podcasts that you want to shout out for people to help with their isolation sanity?
Sure. I always have book recommendations. So I guess we'll do the other stuff before that, because my book recommendation list can be very long. So I don't normally watch a whole lot of movies or TV, but this has been a very nice time for me to catch up on all the shows people tell me to watch. So we've been catching up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I think is just such a funny show.
And that's on Hulu?
So lighthearted and just wonderful, and it's got a new season that's still coming out, and that's just been great. So loving that. Also, I watched Frozen 2 for the first time last night, and that was just lovely. I really liked the whole autumn aesthetic. It was very nice.
And Frozen 2 is on Disney Plus, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine is on Hulu. And we should talk later about Frozen 2, because Kim and I just watched it also, so I have input.
Yeah, we have thoughts.
Well, I've got thoughts.
So those have been really fun. there are a couple others that I'm finishing up watching The Good Place, trying to figure out where to watch the last season. Still haven't figured it out yet, but
we watched The Good Place on Hulu. So if you have Hulu, maybe it's Hulu Plus, I'm not sure, but that's is that what it's called? I don't know. We have Hulu, and we watch The Good Place on there.
Okay, good. So we're gonna finish The Good Place then.
Okay.
So that's been really fun, and yeah, I think this is a really good excuse for me to get back into watching TV shows, because I don't really do a whole lot of that, and so then I get to just sit and watch with Devin. Devin's my roommate. And then if anybody really wants a reason to yell at the TV screen, watch Love is Blind on Netflix.
I love being so impassioned I yell at my television.
It really brings something out in you. Let's see. Also, I did want to mention that I did hear about this really cool extension on Chrome that you can use with Netflix called Netflix Party. And I think it's just on Chrome, but it's essentially you connect with other people with their own Netflix accounts, and it makes it so you can watch the same thing all together, which is really cool. So it's like you're in the same room all watching a movie together, except not because we're all quarantined. But then it's not like you all have to be like, okay, and start. It's like the same on everybody's screen. And I'm not sure if there's like a chat feature on it too. I haven't looked into it that much, but I've heard about it. And so I think that's a really cool option for other people to feel connected and have movie nights. So I think that's about all I've got for TV and movies. Unfortunately, I just am not good for... I need recommendations more than I'm able to give them. Let's see. PodKat, I listen to a lot of book-related podcasts, so I'm not sure how much that appeals to everybody, but I'll give you two. One is Books by Ariel Bissett.
Would you repeat the name of the podcast?
Books Unbound.
Books Unbound.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a really good podcast. It's hosted by a YouTuber that I follow she's a booktuber, and so they just recently made a podcast. And another one is called What Should I Read Next by Anne Bogle with a B.
What should I read next? Okay.
Another one that's not book related that I really love is Happier by Gretchen Rubin. And this one is just such a fun podcast because it really is all about how do you make your life happier? What are these cute little happiness hacks? How can you know yourself better so that you don't drive yourself crazy with your inability to clean the bathroom every week? I don't know.
And repeat the title
really
of that, please. Sorry, would you repeat the title of that one? Happier. Okay.
With Gretchen Rubin.
Okay.
She's known for the book The Happiness Project.
Oh, I've heard of that.
And The Four Tendencies. So she definitely draws a lot on what she wrote about in those books in her podcast. She hosts it with her sister Elizabeth Kraft, who is a TV writer and producer in Hollywood. So it's really fun, and I think especially these days it'll be good to focus on things that make you happier.
I love that. And you said you have a lot of books for us.
Okay, so I need to figure out how to, are we thinking escapism? Or do we want,
I don't know.
Things that...
Give us an option.
Options, okay. One of my favorite books, if not my favorite book from last year, was called Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. And this is just the most precious book. It's a very escapist kind of read. It's a wonderful romance. Will definitely speak to current U.S. politics, I think. And it's such a fun ride, and it's very funny and heartwarming. That is Red, White, and Royal Blue, Casey McQuiston.
Okay.
I recommend so much. Another one, if people want to think about the potential repercussions of our current situation, there is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And this is a post-apocalyptic novel following a pandemic that left the world in not a great place, but it follows people afterward. And it specifically follows a troupe of people who perform Shakespeare for the existing human colonies, and they just go from colony to colony performing Shakespeare for them, among other things. It's a really cool look at, again, what humanity can do when they face a lot of just a lot of darkness and a situation that started out a lot like ours, although current situation does not turn into an actual apocalypse. I doubt it will, though.
I've been interested in, like, right now, the number one watched thing on Netflix is Outbreak from 1995, which I watched in high school. And I thought, like, oh, well, that's on everyone's mind. But I also was like, I don't want to watch that right now. Like, I can't. It's too real. So I kind of am, I'm kind of looking for what you're talking about with the happiness, like maintaining my own mental health and using this time to focus on what I want to do after this ends and to stay positive.
For sure.
But I think a lot of people are going to want to look into pandemic stuff and try to inform themselves. But I also think people are, like, kind of obsessed with, it's hard for them to think of anything else. Even, like, we watched some vlogs on YouTube from a few weeks ago, and I was like, look at them touching everything. Look at them going to the grocery store without fear. Like, it is hard to not think about it no matter what you're watching.
Yeah, that's true.
People were hugging, and I was like, what, hugging? Freely? So it's amazing how much it changed so fast.
Yeah, I cannot say I am one who is really seeking out books and media that have to do with pandemics or mass illness. That's not that I'm all for the escapism here. So give me happiness, give me hope. That's all I want right now. So I guess I'll give you, I don't know how many more. Like 2 more, I guess. A book that I recently read is called The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. And this is a sci-fi book, and it is kind of it almost feels like a road trip novel in space, except you've just got this ragtag group, this crew on the ship called the Wayfarer, and they're on a long haul mission to get from one edge of the galaxy to another, so they could literally punch a hole in space, because their job is to create wormholes. And so they have to go create a wormhole somewhere, and so you follow a girl who is joining the crew, but then you also follow the rest of the crew. You've got different kinds of aliens, which is very fun. Definitely puts a lot of, like, things that we consider normal as humans into perspective, which was really interesting because obviously lizard people are going to have a different worldview. So
are you calling me out for being a lizard person?
I mean, I wasn't gonna name names.
Yes, I am a reptile woman. Confirmed.
Lizard person.
I'm very pro-alien, though. I love alien things. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's really fun. This is it's a character-driven story. There definitely is an underlying plot, but it's really about getting to know the characters and their relationships with each other, which is the kind of book that I love. I love things that are more character-driven, so you really get to know the people and really care about their. So I would recommend that. Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers.
Okay.
Loved it. And there's so many books. There's so many books.
Maybe we'll have another chat and we'll just talk about books we like and things we like. But I think that was really helpful to give a few good things for people to look into. and then maybe we can revisit and talk more about our faves. So.
Okay, yeah, we'll have an all the books podcast. So.
That could be our next thing. I was like, when the pandemic ends, I gotta switch my podcast focus, which is positive. Let's do that. Let's end the podcast, talk about something different. But I gotta start writing down ideas for that. So was there anything that I didn't address that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. I think that it really is just going to be a matter of moving forward what we do now. I think it's important to still not panic. Obviously be careful, self-isolate, do the social distancing, do whatever you can. Try not to be in contact with anybody else physically. But also, panic is not going to help anybody. I think we started to figure that out once people were buying all the toilet paper starting a week ago, that it's just not going to be helpful. And I think that the most important thing we can do is to just be considerate of our fellow man, our fellow humans, because so much is done out of fear and out of wanting to protect yourself, which is totally fine. We should be looking for our own safety, but not at the expense of other people who may not have our same means. I think that's the biggest thing I would really love for us all to keep in mind, that a lot of us are very lucky, and we need to really look out for each other as much as we're looking out for ourselves.
And our fellow lizard people.
And also the fellow lizard people, although I'm not sure if they can... Nova says that viruses don't hop species, so...
Reptiles are the best. Who do you want to hear from next? Who should I talk to next on this PodKat?
Ooh, there's so many good people to talk to. I would say talk to one of our teacher friends, because I can speak for my roommate a little bit, but I know that has been a very difficult and different experience, and there's a lot to learn from them in their ingenuity in adapting very quickly to a new situation.
Man, teachers are the best.
They're the best.
Well, love to all. Take care of yourself and others as you're able. Thanks for listening. Alea, do you want to have the final meow?
Meow!